But we are also talking about Katy Price. Just to let you know, in case you've been living on Mars, she has been found guilty of being drunk in charge of a vehicle. She was cleared of the more serious charge of drink driving. She was found intoxicated on the back seat of her car, and she claimed that the person driving was a mystery man who ran off after an argument. We're going to talk to Nick Freeman now. Nick is a lawyer, sometimes known as Mr. Loophole. Nick, good afternoon. Thank you for joining.
John.
Do you know, when I saw this case, I thought, I bet Nick's doing that one. But you weren't, were you?
No, I wasn't.
No. Could you explain to us why? I mean, I seem to remember cases where people were found intoxicated on the back seat of their cars with the keys in their pocket, and they were done for drink driving.
Well, the police have to prove they were driving, and in this case, the police charged her with drink driving and being drunk in charge. And what they did was they dropped the drink driving, and they proceeded on the drunk in charge. She contested that. Now, there's a big difference. Obviously, if you're accused of drink driving, the police have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you were driving the car. If you're in charge of a vehicle, most people are in charge of a vehicle at any time. So even if you're in bed at night and you're drunk and you have a car and it's on a road or in a public place, you're actually in charge. But we all have a defence that there was no likelihood of you driving the car during such time as you're over the limit.
Right.
It doesn't appear in this case that was the defence that was run. It would appear, and I've looked at the newspaper reports, it would appear that the argument was she wasn't in charge because she was on the back seat, but the police found the keys in her handbag.
Yes.
In any event, the difference from a sentencing, she was convicted of being in charge, and the difference from a sentencing perspective is quite simply, if you're convicted of drink driving, you have a mandatory disqualification period of 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is reduced by 25% upon completion of a drink rehabilitation course. Drunk in charge, it's 10 points. And like speeding, there is a discretionary disqualification. So her reading was 69. It was just under twice the legal limit. She was in charge, not driving, and the sentencing guideline at that level is to impose a fine of it's band B or C, which is commensurate with the fine that she received. And the court is advised, according to the sentencing guideline, to consider a discretionary disqualification or 10 points. And in this case, you've heard what the judge's comments were, and he's imposed a 3-month period of disqualification, which is an alternative to 10 points. So she doesn't get 10 points, she just gets 3 months. Of course, she's already...
Which runs concurrently, doesn't it?
Correct, yes. So there's going to be an overlap of about... So she's about 6 weeks into a 3-month ban.
Yeah.
And so... those two will dovetail for a period of time, and then the 3 months will carry on for another 6 weeks after the expiration of the first.
Look, the bit I don't get, Nick, is that no one seems to know how the car got to where it was. There was only 2 people in the car. They both denied driving it, and they said that the person who was driving it was a mystery person who ran off. Now, I just don't... The judge said that Katy Price was not a plausible or credible witness. Now, I took that to mean that he didn't really believe that story, but she still didn't get done for drunk driving. That's a bit I don't understand.
Well, ultimately, the Crown didn't pursue a charge of drink driving. She wasn't ultimately. That wasn't the trial. The trial was drunk in charge. The Crown felt they couldn't prove the drink driving, presumably because they were, to pursue it, they've got to feel there's at least a 50% chance of conviction, and it's in the public interest. They took a view that wasn't so, and they proceeded on the drunk in charge. So that's the charge she faced, and the judge has made his comments, and he's disqualified her for a period which is commensurate with the sentencing guidelines. So he's basically followed the book for that reading in those circumstances. But
a lot of people get talking to me today saying they don't think they would have been dealt with in the same way. Do you think there's any truth in that? I mean, are we...
First of all, the level of one's notoriety doesn't in any way affect the way she was sentenced. I mean, and that's a total myth.
Okay.
If anything, I would say celebrities are dealt with in a harsher way because they enjoy a public profile, and sometimes the court want to make them an example. But of course, they have to follow the sentencing guidelines. What's interesting in this case from a legal perspective is it appears she hasn't argued that there was no likelihood of her driving the car during such time as she was over the limit. And that's a statutory defence which she could have argued, and I don't believe she did. Obviously, that's a matter for her and her lawyer.
Lawyer, yeah.
But but I can't comment about the facts of the case. I can only talk to you about the law.
Well, that's interesting. Nick, thank you. Nick Freeman, known as Mr. Loophole, of course. He knows the law when it comes to the West. That's really interesting.